It was another busy afternoon at the diner, the sort of day where everyone seemed to be rushing around, plates clattering, the coffee pot always needing a refill. The small space was filled with the smell of grilled sandwiches and fresh-baked pie, the kind of diner you would walk into for a quick, comforting meal. People chatted over coffee, families gathered for lunch, and workers took a moment to relax in between shifts. Behind the counter, a young woman moved quickly between tables, her hands moving in a blur as she refilled drinks and brought out meals. She was used to the pace of the place by now, having worked there for years, but it didn't stop the exhaustion that came with every shift. She was tired, not just from work, but from life. A few months earlier, her mother had fallen ill and she had become the primary caregiver. The responsibility weighed heavily on her, but she pushed through, keeping a smile on her face no matter how much it hurt. Today felt different, though. There was a sort of tension in the air. The diner was quieter than usual, and the regular customers seemed to linger just a little longer, waiting for something to happen. A few new faces came in, people she didn't recognize, but that wasn't too unusual. It was a place where travelers and locals alike would stop for a bite to eat, so it was easy to blend in. Then a man walked in. He was dressed neatly, but not in a way that screamed wealth. His clothes were well made but simple, and he moved with the quiet confidence of someone who didn't need to be noticed. He was accompanied by a boy, his son, she assumed. The boy was in his early teens, but there was something different about him. He had trouble walking, his steps unsteady, and when he sat at the table he looked a little lost, his hands shaking as he tried to settle himself in his seat. His father didn't seem to notice, or maybe he just didn't let on. He gave a quiet nod in her direction, and she made her way over to them. "Hi there, what can I get for you today?" she asked, trying to keep her voice light and cheerful. The father gave a smile that was soft but tired, as if he'd been through a lot in the past few days. "Just 2 meals, please," he said, his voice calm but firm, as if he was used to being in control. "One for me, and something easy for him." She nodded, taking their order, and then went off to get the food started. As she prepared the meal, she couldn't help but notice the boy again. He was trying to eat on his own, but his hands were trembling too much. The food was slipping off his fork and he looked frustrated. He pushed the plate away from him, not wanting to make a scene, but it was clear that he was struggling. She could see the father glancing at him, but he didn't do much to help, as though he wasn't sure what to do. She finished preparing their meal and brought it over. She set the plates down in front of them, but before she could walk away, she stopped herself. Something about the way the boy was staring at the food caught her attention. It wasn't just hunger. It was a kind of helplessness, as if he wanted to eat but couldn't figure out how. She paused, her eyes on the boy for a moment before she looked at his father. There was a silent understanding between them, a sort of acknowledgement that this wasn't just a regular meal. She took a breath, walked back to the table, and asked quietly, "Would you like me to help him with that?" The father looked up, a little surprised at first, then nodded, a soft sigh escaping his lips. "Please," he said, his voice almost a whisper. "I'm not sure how to make it easier for him." She smiled gently, pulling up a chair next to the boy. She didn't say much, just gave a quiet, "It's okay," before she began feeding him. She moved slowly and carefully, making sure he was comfortable with each bite. The boy's hands shook, but as she fed him, his expression softened and she could see the tension in his body begin to fade. It wasn't just about the food, it was about feeling seen, feeling cared for. The father watched from the side, his face a mixture of gratitude and something else. Maybe a little relief, maybe a touch of awe. He had been so busy trying to help his son on his own, so wrapped up in his responsibilities that he hadn't thought to ask for help. Now someone else was stepping in, and it made all the difference. When the boy finished eating, he looked up at her with a small, shy smile. His eyes were still filled with uncertainty, but there was a warmth there that hadn't been there before. The father, too, seemed a little lighter, his shoulders less tense. She stood up to clear the plates, but before she could walk away, the father reached into his wallet. He took out a few bills and handed them to her, but it wasn't just the usual tip. It was a generous amount, more than she had ever received from any customer. "Thank you," he said softly, "for everything." She was about to protest, to tell him that it was no big deal, but the words caught in her throat. There was something about the way he said it, so genuine, so full of appreciation, that made her pause. She nodded, unsure of what to say. "It was my pleasure," she finally said, smiling. They finished their meal and left soon after, the father walking with a calm grace, and the boy beside him still a little unsteady, but moving with more confidence than before. The door jingled as they stepped outside, and the din of the diner returned to its usual hum. But for her, something had shifted. She couldn't stop thinking about the boy, about how something as simple as sharing a meal, taking a moment to help, could mean so much. It wasn't about the tip, though it had been generous. It was about the human connection, the quiet bond that had formed between them. She had done something small, and in doing so she had made a difference in their day. She finished her shift and went home that evening, her mind still on the encounter. She didn't expect anything more from it. It was just a day at work, just another meal served in a diner. But she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to it than that. There had to be. Little did she know the simple act of feeding a young boy would lead to a life-changing moment. What started as a random encounter at a diner would soon transform everything she thought she knew about her own life. Ella was a waitress in a small, cozy diner tucked away from the hustle and bustle of the city. She'd been working long hours for years, always trying to juggle her job with raising her young daughter. Life wasn't easy, but she made it work. Every day was a challenge, but Ella took pride in her ability to manage it all. She had always been the kind of person who wore a smile, no matter how tired or stressed she felt inside. She knew that sometimes a little kindness could make all the difference in someone's day, and she tried to offer that whenever she could. That afternoon, the diner was quieter than usual. The rain outside kept most people indoors, and the few customers who had come in were huddled over their meals trying to keep dry. Ella had just finished serving a table when she saw them walk through the door, a man and his young son. The boy looked different from most kids she had seen before. He didn't run around or joke with his father like the others did. Instead, he sat quietly in his father's arms, his eyes scanning the room with a mix of curiosity and uncertainty. The father, a man who seemed much older than Ella expected, moved carefully, holding the boy gently. He looked tired, his expression worn from the weight of the world. As the pair sat down, Ella could sense that something wasn't right. She had seen enough to know when someone was struggling, even when they didn't say a word. The father gave her a brief nod, and she walked over to their table. "Hi there," Ella greeted them warmly, trying to break the silence with a friendly smile. "Can I get you something to drink while you look at the menu?" The man looked up, his eyes briefly meeting hers. There was a sense of distance, as though he was lost in his own thoughts, but he managed a small smile in return. "Water will be fine," he said softly, his voice quiet but steady. Ella noticed the boy staring at the menu, but his eyes seemed unfocused, almost like he didn't quite understand it. He was looking at the pictures of food but didn't reach for any of the items on the table. She had seen kids his age eager to order something sweet or familiar, but not this boy. It didn't take long for Ella to realize that something was different about him, but she couldn't quite place what it was. "Would you like some help with that?" she asked, kneeling down to Luke's level. The boy looked at her with wide, soft eyes, and for a moment she felt an unexpected connection. She could tell that he needed something beyond just the food on the table. Maybe it was the comfort of knowing someone cared, or maybe it was something deeper. Whatever it was, Ella felt it, and instinctively she spoke to him in a gentle voice. After a few moments of silence, she asked, "Would you like me to help you order something? Maybe something you really like?" The boy hesitated before nodding. It was the smallest of gestures, but it was enough for Ella to know that this was a moment when she could make a difference. She smiled at him before turning to his father. "Don't worry, I'll take care of everything," she said, her tone light and reassuring. The father seemed surprised at her offer, but he gave a grateful nod and sat back as if he welcomed the help. Ella took the boy's hand gently and asked him what his favorite food was. At first there was no response, but then, after a pause, Luke looked up at her with a small, shy smile and pointed at the pancakes on the menu. It was such a simple request, but to Ella it felt like a small victory. "Pancakes it is then," Ella said, feeling a sense of pride that she had been able to connect with him, even if just for a moment. She placed the order, then came back to the table to check on them as she made sure everything was just right. As she set down the pancakes in front of Luke, she took a seat beside him, observing how he carefully tried to cut into the soft, fluffy pancakes. His hand trembled slightly, and she could tell that he was struggling to feed himself. She didn't think twice. She picked up the fork, cut the pancake into smaller pieces, and gently fed him one bite at a time. Michael, the boy's father, watched the whole scene unfold, his face filled with gratitude. He had always tried to be the strong one for his son, but it was moments like this that reminded him of how much he needed others, how much he needed help, even if he never asked for it. Michael had always been the one to provide, but seeing this waitress step in without hesitation, without a second thought, made him feel something deep inside. It was a feeling he couldn't easily describe. Ella continued to feed Luke in between small conversations. The boy seemed to grow more comfortable with each passing moment. It was clear that she wasn't just feeding him, but providing him with a sense of care that he hadn't experienced in a long time. For Luke, it wasn't just about eating. It was about feeling seen, understood, and safe in a world that often made him feel isolated. As the meal came to an end, Michael thanked Ella, his voice filled with sincerity. "I don't know how to thank you enough. You've really helped my son today," he said, his eyes meeting hers with a depth of appreciation she hadn't expected. Ella smiled back at him. "It was my pleasure. He's a wonderful kid," she said softly, her eyes lingering on the boy who was now finished with his pancakes. His face lit up with a quiet sense of contentment. After they finished, Michael left a generous tip on the table, and they left the diner. Ella stood at the counter watching them go, still thinking about the brief interaction she'd had with them. There was something about the moment that stayed with her long after they had left, but as she cleaned the table, something inside her stirred. She didn't just help them out of a sense of duty or because it was her job. She helped because she saw them as human beings just like anyone else. She saw beyond the wheelchair, beyond the challenges they faced. And somehow, that made all the difference. Little did Ella know, this small act of kindness would not only change Luke's day, but would also have a profound impact on her own life. It was the kind of moment that showed her just how much the world could change when you reached out and showed someone that you cared, even in the smallest way. As weeks passed, the small act of kindness that had started with a simple meal became the turning point in her life. The young waitress couldn't believe how much her world had shifted since that day in the restaurant. The billionaire's offer to work with his charity had caught her completely off guard. She had always dreamed of doing something meaningful with her life, but never imagined it would come in such an unexpected way. It wasn't an easy decision. She had grown up working hard to support her family. She had always been independent, managing multiple jobs just to stay afloat. Giving up her waitressing shifts meant losing some of the little security she had built up. But something about John's offer tugged at her heart. He had listened to her story with such attention and care. She wasn't just another person to him. She was someone with potential, someone worthy of opportunity. After weeks of thinking it over, she decided to take a chance. It was a leap, but maybe it was the one she needed. The first day at the charity felt like stepping into a whole new world. The office was filled with people who cared deeply about their mission. They weren't just doing jobs, they were working toward a cause they believed in. It was a place where each person was seen for more than just their position. They were a team united by one goal: to help children with disabilities lead full lives. The work was challenging, but it was rewarding in ways she had never known. At first, she worked as a part-time assistant, handling administrative tasks and managing some of the day-to-day operations. She wasn't used to sitting at a desk for long hours, and the transition was harder than she thought. But she was determined. Every day she learned something new. Whether it was how to plan a therapy session for children or how to handle tough conversations with parents, she absorbed it all. Slowly but surely, she started to see how everything connected, how each action, no matter how small, made a difference in the lives of those who needed it the most. She was amazed at how much she enjoyed the work. The more she learned, the more her passion grew. She had always known she wanted to help people, but now she realized just how much of an impact she could make. The idea of becoming a therapist for children with special needs, something she had only dreamed of years before, was becoming a reality. John, who had initially offered her the position, remained a steady presence in her journey. He wasn't just a boss, he was someone who genuinely cared. He took time to check in with her, offering advice and encouragement when things got tough. His quiet leadership wasn't about giving orders. It was about helping others find their way, just as he had done for her. She had always admired how he treated others with such respect and kindness, regardless of their background. And now, through his guidance, she was starting to believe in herself in a way she never had before. With each passing week, she felt more confident. She knew that this new path, though different from what she had imagined, was exactly where she needed to be. John didn't just see her as a waitress who got lucky. He saw the hard work and determination behind her. He had recognized something in her that she hadn't even fully recognized in herself. It was the potential to do more, to be more. As she worked alongside the team, her understanding of the charity's work deepened. She was no longer just an assistant. She was becoming an integral part of the mission. The more she interacted with the families and children the charity served, the more she realized how much she had to offer. One afternoon, after a meeting with a group of parents, she found herself sitting in the office, reflecting on how far she had come. A few months ago, she had been waiting tables, unsure of what the future held. Now she was part of something bigger than herself, helping families navigate the challenges of raising children with disabilities. She felt a deep sense of fulfillment, something she had never experienced before. But she also couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that she wanted more. She wanted to help the children on a deeper level, to be the one who worked directly with them, to provide the therapy and care that could truly change their lives. She began to ask herself if it was possible for her to go back to school and pursue that dream. The idea was both thrilling and terrifying. Could she really afford to take that step? Could she balance her work with the demanding schedule of school? It was around this time that John approached her again. He could see the drive in her, the spark of ambition that was slowly turning into a blazing fire. He asked her how she was doing and if there was anything more he could do to support her. After some hesitation, she admitted that she had been thinking about going back to school to become a therapist. John's response was immediate and enthusiastic. He told her that he would do everything he could to help her reach that goal, whether it was offering flexible hours at the charity or helping with tuition fees. The offer was overwhelming. She had never thought someone like him would care so much about her personal dreams. He had already done so much for her, and now he was offering to help her make the impossible possible. It was a moment of clarity. She had been so focused on surviving, on getting through each day, that she hadn't given herself the chance to think about what she truly wanted out of life. Now she saw a path forward. It wasn't going to be easy, but with the support of John and the charity, she knew it could be done. With a renewed sense of purpose, she began the process of applying to schools. She worked harder than ever, balancing her part-time role at the charity with her studies. It wasn't always easy, and there were many late nights and moments of doubt. But she never gave up. Each day she moved a little closer to her goal. She was no longer just waiting tables and dreaming about a better life. She was making that life happen step by step. John continued to check in on her progress, proud of her determination. As she grew in her role at the charity, he saw how much she was beginning to change, not just in her career, but in her confidence and her outlook on life. She had gone from being unsure of herself to being someone who others looked up to. Her journey was still far from over, but for the first time she felt like she was truly on the right path. And so, with each passing day, the young waitress became more than she had ever dreamed possible. The simple kindness she had shown that day in the restaurant had set her on a journey she could never have imagined, one that would change her life and the lives of countless others. She was no longer just someone trying to survive. She was someone with a purpose, a mission, and a future that was brighter than she had ever believed it could be. Emily arrived at the culinary school with a mix of excitement and nervousness. It felt like stepping into a completely different world. She had always dreamed of becoming a great chef, but coming from a modest background, she had never imagined it would actually happen. Now she was here, on a full scholarship with everything paid for by the billionaire father of the young boy she had once helped. She still couldn't believe it. How had a simple act of kindness changed her life so dramatically? At first, things weren't easy. Culinary school was tough. The kitchen was fast-paced, the hours long, and the pressure intense. But Emily was determined. She loved cooking, and now she was surrounded by some of the best chefs in the world. It was overwhelming at times, but every day, she found herself learning something new, something that kept her going. Her classmates were often impressed by her natural ability to blend flavors and create dishes that had a personal touch. But Emily didn't think about it that way. For her, cooking was about more than just ingredients. It was about creating something that could make people feel something. She had learned that from the way food had always brought comfort to her family. And now in this school she was learning to turn that simple love for food into a skill that could take her places. It wasn't just the cooking techniques that Emily was mastering. She was also learning about herself. Growing up, she had always doubted her own abilities. She wasn't rich, she didn't have connections, and she certainly didn't have the support of a family that could give her the kind of opportunities other people had. But as she worked her way through the challenges of culinary school, she began to realize that she was capable of more than she ever thought possible. Each day, she got a little better, whether it was perfecting her knife skills, learning new recipes, or mastering the art of plating. But it wasn't just the technical side of cooking that inspired her. It was the moments when her teachers or fellow students would compliment her on a dish she'd made, or when she could see the joy on someone's face as they tasted the food she prepared. That was when she knew she was on the right path. As the months passed, Emily began to feel more at home in the school. She even started to make friends, something she hadn't expected. Many of her classmates came from wealthy backgrounds, and they initially seemed out of her league. But over time, they saw how passionate and dedicated she was. She wasn't trying to show off or compete with anyone. She simply loved what she was doing. And that genuine love for cooking started to win people over. Despite the friendships she was forming, Emily never forgot why she was here. Every time she stepped into the kitchen, she thought about the opportunity she had been given, the chance to follow her dreams, and she knew that she couldn't let it slip away. Meanwhile, Jonathan, the father who had changed her life, kept in touch with Emily. Every few weeks, he'd send her a message asking how things were going and offering words of encouragement. Emily appreciated it more than she let on. It was hard to explain to her friends just how much Jonathan's support meant to her. He wasn't just the billionaire who had changed her life. He was also a reminder that sometimes all it takes is one person to believe in you to make a world of difference. Jonathan also kept up with Caleb's progress. The young boy who had once needed so much help had come a long way. While he still had his challenges, there were small victories that made a big difference. Emily was glad to hear about Caleb's improvements. She had never imagined that her time spent helping him eat in that diner would lead to something so big, and the connection she had formed with Caleb and his father remained strong, even though she was far away. When Emily graduated, she felt a mix of emotions. On one hand, she was proud of herself. She had worked so hard, overcome so many challenges, and had proven to herself that she could do this. On the other hand, she was a little nervous. The culinary world was huge, and she had no idea where to start. But she didn't let her fears stop her. She was ready. Jonathan, of course, was there for her. He offered her an opportunity to work at one of the top restaurants he owned. Emily couldn't believe it. This was it, the moment she had worked so hard for. But even with the incredible job offer, she didn't want to forget where she had come from. Emily had always known that cooking wasn't just about success and recognition. It was about making a difference in people's lives. Soon after starting her job at the restaurant, Emily began to think about how she could give back. She remembered how much her life had changed because of Jonathan's belief in her, and she wanted to offer the same kind of support to others. She started a mentorship program for young people, especially those from disadvantaged backgrounds who wanted to get into the culinary arts. Emily knew firsthand how hard it could be to find your way in the world when you didn't have the resources others did. She wanted to change that for the next generation of chefs. Her restaurant also became known for its commitment to helping people with disabilities. She worked with local organizations to create job opportunities for individuals who faced challenges like Caleb. Emily knew that everyone deserved a chance to do something they loved, no matter their circumstances. As the years passed, Emily became a recognized name in the culinary world. Her restaurant gained a reputation for not just incredible food, but also for its community involvement. Emily had never set out to become famous. She had always wanted to use her skills to bring joy to others. And now, as her success grew, she was able to make an even bigger impact. But through it all, she never forgot the moment in that diner when she had helped Caleb. That one small act of kindness had led to something much bigger than she could have imagined. She had touched someone's life in a way she hadn't expected, and in turn her life had been changed forever. Jonathan, too, was proud of how far Emily had come. He had always believed in her. but even he had been amazed by her strength, resilience, and the way she had used her success to help others. Emily had become not just a talented chef, but a leader in her own right. And Caleb, though still facing his challenges, was growing up to be a young man who understood the power of kindness. Too, in the end, Emily's story was one of transformation, not just her own, but of the lives she had touched along the way. And as she stood in her restaurant watching a new generation of young chefs step into the kitchen, she knew that her journey was far from over. She had started with a dream, but now she was helping others realize theirs. The ripple effect of that one small act of kindness had created a wave of change that would continue for years to come. Maria stood by the window of her small apartment, looking out at the city as the sun set, casting a soft orange glow across the skyline. The street below was buzzing with the usual evening rush, people hurrying home from work, some stopping to grab food from street vendors, others hailing taxis to get to their next destination. Life had a rhythm, a flow, and for the first time in a long while, Maria felt like she was finally in tune with it. She had come a long way from the days when she was struggling to make ends meet. Back then, her world had been filled with uncertainty. Each day was a battle to keep things together. Between taking care of her son, working long hours at the restaurant, and trying to manage the little bit of time she had left for herself, it often felt like she was just trying to keep her head above water, but that had all changed in a way she never could have imagined. When the billionaire had made that offer, it had seemed unreal at first. A job with a salary far beyond what she could ever dream of. A position in a company that could open doors she never thought she'd have the chance to walk through. It was overwhelming yet exhilarating. Maria had spent nights lying awake, wondering if she was truly worthy of such an opportunity. Her life had been built on modest means, and the idea of stepping into a world of wealth and privilege felt like stepping into someone else's story. But the moment she walked into that office, something shifted inside her. The initial nervousness faded as she realized that she wasn't just there because of some random act of kindness. She was there because she had something valuable to offer, the same qualities that had made her an exceptional waitress. Her patience, her ability to read people, her deep empathy, were the very things that would allow her to thrive in her new role. It wasn't about money or status. It was about making a difference, and she did make a difference. The team she joined quickly realized how much she brought to the table. Maria was thoughtful, hardworking, and always willing to go above and beyond to help others. She didn't need to put on any airs or act like someone she wasn't. She was simply herself, and that's what people admired about her. Slowly, she worked her way up, taking on more responsibility, gaining respect from her colleagues, and earning her place in the company. She even started to mentor some of the newer employees, sharing her knowledge and experience with them. Her son, too, had blossomed in ways she couldn't have predicted. The new job allowed her to provide him with better care, more opportunities, and a future that was far brighter than she had ever hoped for. Maria had always been a loving mother, but now she was able to offer him a sense of stability and security that she had never been able to before. Their life together felt more complete, more whole. Still, it wasn't just the material changes that made her life different. It was the way her perspective had shifted. She had always known that there was more to life than just surviving, but now she felt like she was truly living. She had a purpose. She had goals. And she had the chance to make a difference in the world, not just for herself and her son, but for others as well. Maria's relationship with the billionaire and his son had also grown. What had started as a simple act of kindness in a restaurant had turned into something far deeper, a connection built on mutual respect and understanding. The father, who had once been so emotionally distant, now took a more active role in his son's life. Maria had witnessed the transformation herself during the visits to the restaurant. The once cold and distant man had become more present, more engaged, and more connected to the people around him. It was clear that his son's disability had not only changed his life, but it had also opened his eyes to the importance of relationships, of being there for others. Over time, the billionaire had become more than just a boss to Maria. He had become a mentor, someone who guided her when she needed advice, and someone she could turn to for support. Their relationship was based on genuine friendship, not just business, and Maria knew she could count on him, not only for career opportunities but also for personal growth. He had been there for her in ways she hadn't expected, offering guidance when she needed it and challenging her to grow in ways she hadn't thought possible. One afternoon, as Maria sat in her office looking over some reports, the billionaire stopped by her desk. He smiled and leaned in slightly as if sharing a secret. "You've done more than just change your own life, you know," he said, his voice warm but serious. "You've inspired all of us. You've shown us what really matters: kindness, hard work, and the ability to connect with people on a deeper level." Maria smiled, feeling a sense of pride swell inside her. She hadn't set out to be an inspiration. She had simply tried to do her best, day after day. But hearing those words from someone she respected so much meant more than she could put into words. That evening, as she returned home after a long day, her son was waiting for her, as he always was. He ran to her with a wide grin on his face, his arms open for a hug. In that moment, Maria realized that this was the real reward: the love and happiness she shared with her son. Everything else was just a bonus. Life wasn't perfect, of course. There were still challenges to face, obstacles to overcome, and struggles to deal with. But now Maria felt equipped to handle whatever came her way. She had the strength, the support, and the determination to keep moving forward. And as she looked back on everything that had led her to this moment, the long hours at the restaurant, the kindness of a stranger, the opportunity to prove herself, she couldn't help but feel an overwhelming sense of gratitude. She had come so far, and she knew that this was only the beginning. Her story was no longer one of struggle and survival. It was one of hope, of transformation, and of the incredible power of human connection. She had learned that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness could lead to the biggest changes, and that no matter where you start in life, with enough love, determination, and support, anything was possible. As she tucked her son into bed that night, she whispered a promise to him, a promise that their future was bright, and that no matter what, they would always be there for each other. And in that quiet moment, surrounded by the love she had worked so hard to build, Maria knew that she was exactly where she was meant to be.